Mr. B and friends march on so bold, searching for secrets hidden in the fold. Under the vows where shadows creep, the truth awaits and mysteries deep. There's a call out from the shadows hold, stories untold where courage is gold, exposing the lies that bind the free, expanding horizons for all to see. Forces call out from the shadows hold, stories untold where courage is gold, exposing the lies that bind the free, expanding horizons for all to see. Truth seekers rise, lift your eyes, break the chains darkness defies. Shine the light, uncover what's right, for all to see in the dead of night. Voices arise like sparks in the dark, instrumental are we, leaving a mark. No more silence, the truth shall unseal. With every step, the wounds will heal. Courageous hearts in unity stand. With revelations, the world is planned. There's fallen away like dust in the breeze. Truth sets us free, we'll never appease. Rise, lift your eyes, break the chains darkness defies. Shine the light, uncover what's right, for all to see in the dead of night. Rise, lift your eyes, break the chains darkness defies. Shine the light, uncover what's right, for all to see in the dead of night. In the dead of night. In the dead of night.
Welcome to another episode of Mr. B and Friends Truth Seekers. G'day everyone, John Oliver here, and let's talk about something that sounds straight out of a spy thriller, but hits a little too close to home: the deep state. It's a term that conjures images of secret meetings, covert operations, and a hidden hand guiding the course of history. You know, that shadowy group pulling the strings behind the scenes, controlling everything from governments to, yes, even the media. It's the stuff of movies, but some believe it's all too real. Now, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but when it comes to power, where there's smoke, there's usually a fire. And mate, there's a lot of smoke billowing around this one. The whispers of the deep state have been around for decades, and they show no signs of fading away. We're told to trust the powers that be, to believe the narrative spun by our institutions. The news we watch, the stories we read, all come from sources we are taught to trust implicitly. But what if those institutions aren't what they seem? What if behind the polished facade lies a web of deceit and manipulation? What if the information we consume, the news we digest, is being carefully curated to shape our perceptions and control our actions? It's a sobering thought, one that makes us question the very foundation of our understanding. It's a chilling thought, right? The idea that our reality, the world we navigate daily, could be a construct designed to keep us in line. The idea that our very reality is being manipulated, all to serve the agendas of a select few. It's like living in a house of mirrors, where nothing is quite as it seems. This isn't just about shadowy figures in smoke-filled rooms, though. It's about the pervasive influence that can seep into every corner of our lives. It's about the very fabric of our society, the systems that govern our lives, and the information that shapes our understanding of the world. These systems are supposed to serve us, but what if they're being used to control us instead? It's about the potential for those systems to be corrupted, for power to become concentrated in the hands of the few, and for the masses to be left none the wiser. The implications are vast and deeply unsettling, and that's what we're going to delve into today. The concept of the deep state, its alleged control over the media, and what it means for us, the everyday folks trying to navigate this increasingly complex world. We'll explore the origins of this idea, the evidence that supports it, and the counter-arguments that challenge it. Because let's be honest, the world is a messy place, full of competing interests, hidden agendas, and power struggles that play out both in the open and behind closed doors. Understanding these dynamics is crucial if we are to make sense of the world around us and protect our own autonomy in the face of such overwhelming forces. So what exactly is the deep state? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean? Well, that's where things get a bit murky. The concept itself is shrouded in ambiguity and often misunderstood. It's not a formal organization with a membership list and a mission statement. There's no official roster or public meetings. Instead, it's more of a network, an interconnected web of individuals and groups operating within governments, intelligence agencies, corporations, and yes, even the media. These entities work together, often behind the scenes to influence policy and public perception. They share a common goal to maintain their grip on power, influence, and resources. This isn't about a single agenda, but rather a collective effort to preserve their status and control. Think of it like a shadowy cabal, working tirelessly to shape events, steer narratives, and ensure that their interests are always prioritized. They pull the strings from the shadows, often unnoticed by the general public. They operate in the shadows, wielding influence through a combination of secrecy, manipulation, and often outright deception. Their methods are subtle but effective, making it difficult to pinpoint their exact actions. They're the puppet masters, and we the public are the unwitting puppets, dancing to a tune we didn't even realize was being played. Our perceptions and beliefs are subtly shaped by their hidden hand. Now you might be thinking, come on John, isn't this a bit far-fetched? And I hear you. It's natural to be skeptical of such a grand narrative. It sounds like something out of a Hollywood blockbuster, a conspiracy theory too outlandish to be true. The idea of a hidden network pulling the strings seems like pure fiction. But here's the thing about conspiracy theories. They often have a grain of truth to them, a kernel of reality that gets distorted and amplified until it becomes something unrecognizable. The challenge is separating fact from fiction. The truth is, power structures exist. Influence networks are real. These are not just figments of imagination, but tangible entities that shape our world. And the potential for those networks to be corrupted, to serve their own interests at the expense of the common good, is a very real danger. History has shown us time and again how power can be abused. That's not to say that every government official, every intelligence agent, every journalist is in on some grand conspiracy. Most are dedicated professionals doing their jobs. But it is to say that we need to be aware of the potential for abuse, for the manipulation of information, and for the erosion of trust in our institutions. Vigilance and critical thinking are our best defenses against such threats. So how does this alleged deep state actually exert its influence? Well, one of their most powerful tools is arguably the media. By controlling the flow of information, shaping narratives, and influencing public opinion, the media can make or break governments, sway elections, and even spark revolutions. It's a potent weapon, and one that the deep state allegedly uses to great effect. Imagine this: a news cycle saturated with stories that promote a particular agenda, while dissenting voices are silenced, discredited, or simply drowned out by the sheer volume of propaganda. Critical thinking is replaced with blind acceptance, and questioning the official narrative becomes an act of heresy. This is the insidious power of media manipulation, and it's a tactic that's been used time and time again throughout history. But it's not just about controlling the message, it's also about controlling the messengers. Journalists, editors, and media personalities can be influenced, coerced, or even compromised to toe the line and promote the desired narrative. This can be achieved through a variety of means, from financial incentives and career advancement opportunities to threats, intimidation, and even blackmail. And then there's the issue of ownership. As media conglomerates grow larger and more powerful, the potential for a small number of individuals or corporations to control vast swathes of the information landscape becomes a very real concern. When the same entities own newspapers, television networks, and online platforms, it creates an environment where dissenting voices can be easily silenced and alternative viewpoints struggle to gain traction. Now let's talk about one of the biggest challenges facing humanity today: overpopulation. With a global population rapidly approaching 8 billion people, the strain on our planet's resources is becoming increasingly apparent. From climate change and deforestation to resource depletion and pollution, the consequences of our growing numbers are all around us. Now, I'm not here to debate the merits of population control or to suggest that there's some evil plan to cull the herd. But I do think it's worth considering how this narrative of overpopulation might be used to justify certain policies, to create a sense of fear and urgency, and to pave the way for more authoritarian forms of governance. Think about it. If you want to control the masses, what better way than to convince them that their very existence is a threat to the planet? By framing overpopulation as an existential crisis, those in power can justify all sorts of measures, from limiting personal freedoms to implementing draconian population control policies. And let's not forget the economic implications. A larger population means more competition for jobs, resources, and opportunities. It means more pressure on social safety nets and greater potential for social unrest. In this context, it's not difficult to see how those in power might view population control as a necessary evil, a way to maintain order and stability in a world of dwindling resources. So where does the media fit into all of this? Well, the media plays a crucial role in shaping our understanding of complex issues like overpopulation. By controlling the narrative, highlighting certain aspects of the issue while downplaying others, the media can influence public opinion and even sway government policy. If the powers that be want to implement certain measures, whether it's increased surveillance, restrictions on personal freedoms, or even more draconian population control policies, they need to create a climate of fear and acceptance. And what better way to do that than through the media? By constantly bombarding us with stories about the dangers of overpopulation, the strain on resources, and the potential for societal collapse, the media can create a sense of urgency, a feeling that drastic measures are needed to avert disaster. And when people are afraid, they're more likely to accept solutions that they might otherwise find unpalatable. So the next time you see a news report about overpopulation, take a moment to consider the source. Who's funding the research? Who's benefiting from this narrative? And most importantly, is this an objective presentation of the facts, or is it a carefully crafted narrative designed to elicit a particular emotional response? Now let's be clear. Controlling billions of people is no easy feat. It's like herding cats, except the cats have smartphones, opinions, and a pesky habit of voting, sometimes. So how can any group, even a shadowy, all-powerful one, possibly hope to exert control over such a vast and diverse population? Well, it's all about perception. The deep state, if it exists, doesn't need to control every single person directly. They just need to create the illusion of control to foster a sense that resistance is futile, that the system is too big, too powerful to challenge. Think about it. We live in a world of information overload, bombarded with news, social media updates, and endless streams of content. It's overwhelming, and in the face of such a deluge, it's easy to feel powerless, like our individual voices don't matter. And that's precisely the feeling that those seeking control want to cultivate. Because when people feel powerless, they become apathetic. They disengage from the political process. They stop questioning the narratives they're fed. And that's when those in power can operate with impunity, their actions hidden behind a veil of public indifference. But apathy isn't the only tool in the control playbook. We live in the age of big data, where every click, every like, every purchase is tracked, analyzed, and used to build detailed profiles of who we are, what we believe, and what makes us tick. And this data, my friends, is a goldmine for anyone looking to manipulate and control. Think about it. With enough data points, you can start to predict behavior, identify potential troublemakers, and even tailor messaging to exploit people's fears and prejudices. It's like having a crystal ball that shows you not just the future, but also the buttons you need to push to make that future a reality. And this isn't some dystopian fantasy, it's happening right now. Algorithms curate our news feeds, showing us content that reinforces our existing biases and filters out dissenting viewpoints. Targeted advertising manipulates our desires, convincing us to buy things we don't need with money we don't have. And all the while, our data is being collected, analyzed, and used to refine these systems, making them even more effective at controlling our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. Now you might be thinking, so what? I see a few targeted ads, big deal. And sure, on the surface, it might seem harmless. But here's the thing about control. It's insidious. It creeps in slowly, incrementally, until one day you wake up and realize you're trapped in a system that feels impossible to escape. It starts with something small, a new law that restricts freedom of speech in the name of national security, a surveillance program that tracks your online activity to combat terrorism. These measures are often sold to the public as necessary evils, regrettable but essential to protect us from some perceived threat. But once those precedents are set, once those lines are crossed, it becomes easier and easier to justify further encroachments on our liberties. The surveillance program expands, now monitoring not just suspected terrorists, but also political dissidents, journalists, and even ordinary citizens. The restrictions on free speech tighten, now encompassing not just hate speech, but also any form of dissent that challenges the official narrative. And the scariest part? Many people welcome this control. Faced with a world that feels increasingly chaotic and unpredictable, they crave order, security, and the comfort of being told what to think and how to feel. And that's a dangerous path to go down, my friends. Because the allure of order, the promise of safety and security, can blind us to the true cost of control. It can lead us to surrender our freedoms willingly, to embrace the chains that bind us, all in the name of a stability that often proves to be nothing more than an illusion. But here's the thing. True freedom, true security, can't exist without a healthy dose of chaos, without the right to dissent, to question, to challenge the status quo. A world without those things, a world where everyone thinks and acts the same, is a world without progress, without innovation, without the very essence of what makes us human. So what can we do about it? How do we fight back against this creeping tide of control, this insidious erosion of our freedoms? It starts with awareness, with recognizing the problem for what it is, and refusing to be lulled into a state of complacent acceptance. We need to start questioning the narratives we're fed, to seek out alternative viewpoints, and to engage in critical thinking. We need to support independent media outlets, journalists who are willing to hold power to account, and organizations that are fighting to protect our freedoms. And most importantly, we need to talk to each other. We need to have those uncomfortable conversations, to challenge our own biases, and to build bridges of understanding across ideological divides. Because the more we communicate, the more we connect, the harder it becomes for those in power to divide and conquer us. Remember, the opposite of control isn't chaos, It's freedom. It's the freedom to think for ourselves, to speak our minds, and to shape our own destinies. It's a messy, chaotic, and often unpredictable process, but it's also the only way to ensure that our societies remain truly free and just. So the next time you see a news report that feels a little too convenient, a government policy that raises more questions than answers, or a social media post designed to stoke fear and division, don't just scroll past it. Stop and think, ask questions, challenge the narrative. Because the price of silence, my friends, is far greater than the discomfort of dissent. It's a world where our thoughts, our beliefs, and our very lives are controlled by those who claim to know what's best for us. And that's a world we should all be fighting to prevent. Right. Let's talk about how this so-called deep state, these puppet masters, actually go about tightening their grip. And mate, it's not as dramatic as you might think. No black helicopters swooping down, no men in black knocking on doors, at least not at first. It's far more insidious, far more subtle. They start by shaping the very fabric of our reality, the information we consume, the stories we tell ourselves, the way we see the world. And that's where the media comes in. Now, I'm not saying every journalist is in cahoots with some shadowy cabal, but let's be honest, media outlets are businesses, and businesses need to make money. And when a handful of corporations control the vast majority of news outlets, well, let's just say their priorities might not always align with delivering unbiased, objective truth to the masses. So, how does it work? It starts with subtle bias, burying inconvenient truths on page 12, while splashing fear-mongering headlines across the front page. They'll trot out the same experts, the ones who sing the deep state's tune, while silencing dissenting voices, branding them as conspiracy theorists, or even worse, unpatriotic. The goal isn't necessarily to make you believe a lie, but rather to plant a seed of doubt, to make you question your own judgment, your own ability to discern fact from fiction. And once that seed is planted, mate, it's amazing how quickly it can grow. Section 2. Sowing Discord, the art of divide and conquer. Once they've got a handle on the narrative, the next step is to divide and conquer. Humans crave connection, belonging, a sense of tribe. The deep state exploits this, pitting us against each other. They'll stoke existing divisions, race, religion, political ideology, to keep us distracted. Social media becomes a weapon, amplifying extreme voices, creating echo chambers. A divided populace is a controllable populace. While they're busy dividing us, they're also cultivating an atmosphere of fear. Fear shuts down critical thinking, making us more susceptible to manipulation. They'll manufacture crises, real or imagined, bombarding us with images of chaos and violence. In this state of anxiety, we start to see threats everywhere, even in our own communities. When fear reaches fever pitch, they make their move. They'll declare a state of emergency, citing some threat to national security. Martial law is imposed. Freedoms are suspended indefinitely. They'll tell you it's for your own good, to restore order. And many, conditioned by fear, will believe them, welcoming the illusion of safety. You might think this sounds like a dystopian novel, not real life. But history teaches us it's happened before. The road to tyranny is often paved with good intentions, promises of safety that prove hollow. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We can't afford to be complacent. Section 6. Waking up to the walls, recognizing the signs of a police state. How do we know if we're headed down that slippery slope? Increased surveillance, restrictions on free speech, demonization of dissent. These are red flags. Pay attention to the language used by those in power. If something feels wrong, trust your gut and ask questions. Section 1. Living under a shadow, life in a police state. The worst has happened. Martial law is in effect. The streets are patrolled by armed soldiers. Tension fills the air. Propaganda blares from loudspeakers. News is government-sanctioned lies. Leaving your house becomes a calculated risk. Checkpoints dot every intersection. Every conversation is strained. Every interaction laced with fear. Section 2. The crushing weight of conformity. Fear worms its way into your mind, stifling your voice. You start to second-guess yourself, questioning every word, every action. The fear becomes a prison more confining than any cell. The bonds of community fray, replaced by suspicion and isolation. Even under the crushing weight of a police state, the human spirit finds a way to survive. Acts of defiance, at first hesitant, begin to multiply. Underground networks emerge, sharing information, coordinating actions. Artists and musicians find subtle ways to subvert the regime's propaganda. The flame of hope flickers in the darkness. An act of courage ignites a spark. A lone student challenges the government's version of history. A shopkeeper refuses to display propaganda posters. Grandmothers stage a silent protest in the town square. These acts of defiance create ripples of hope, inspiring others. The regime grapples with the indomitable spirit of a people determined to reclaim their freedom. The deep state uses digital weapons to spread disinformation. It's a new kind of battlefield, where the weapons are memes and hashtags. The resistance adapts, fighting back with digital savvy. They build alternative platforms, create secure communication channels. The pen or the keyboard can be mightier than the sword. Section 6. Building bridges, breaking chains, the power of collective action. As the resistance grows, artificial divisions begin to crumble. People find common cause in their shared struggle for freedom. They realize the real enemy is the oppressive system. The fight for freedom requires collective action, a willingness to stand together. The human spirit, united in a common purpose, is a force more powerful than any regime. Section 1. Reclaiming our narrative, the antidote to propaganda. Control and propaganda only work if we let them. We have the power to reject those narratives. We can choose to engage in meaningful conversations with different viewpoints. We can reclaim our attention, our critical thinking, and our own narratives. Section 2. Guardians of Truth, the importance of independent media. Independent journalists are crucial, holding the powerful accountable. They're not beholden to corporate interests, only to the truth. In a world awash in disinformation, reliable sources are crucial. Supporting independent media is an investment worth making. In the fight against disinformation, independent media is our strongest weapon. Knowledge is power, arming ourselves with information. But it's not enough to just consume information. We need to be critical consumers. We need to develop our BS detectors, to learn how to spot fake news, to identify logical fallacies, to see through the smoke and mirrors of propaganda. Think of it like learning a new language, the language of critical thinking. It takes time, it takes effort. But mate, let me tell you, it's a skill worth mastering, because once you start to see the world through the lens of critical thinking, once you start to question everything, you'll be amazed at what you discover. Read widely, and not just from sources you agree with. Challenge your own biases. Engage in respectful debate with people who hold different viewpoints. Learn how to identify logical fallacies, to spot emotional manipulation, to separate fact from opinion. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Lots of questions. Question the narratives you're fed. Question the motives of those in power. Question everything. Because the more questions we ask, the harder it becomes for those in control to maintain their grip on the truth. From apathy to action, finding your voice, making it heard. Now, knowledge without action is like a didgeridoo without a breath. It might look impressive, but it won't make much of a sound. So, once you've armed yourself with information, with critical thinking skills, it's time to put that knowledge into action. And that doesn't mean you need to go full-on revolutionary, storming the barricades with a pitchfork in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other. Although if that's your thing, more power to you. There are countless ways to make your voice heard, to contribute to the fight against control, to build a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. Start by talking to your friends and family. Share what you've learned. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Challenge the status quo. Get involved in your local community. Support organizations that are fighting for social justice, for environmental protection, for transparency and accountability in government. Vote, mate. I know it seems obvious, but in a democracy, our vote is our voice. Do your research. Choose candidates who align with your values and hold them accountable once they're in office. Holding power accountable, the importance of transparency and oversight. Because here's the thing about power, about any group that seeks to control others. It thrives in the shadows. It relies on secrecy, on a lack of transparency, on our willingness to look the other way. So how do we combat that? By shining a light on it, by demanding transparency, by holding those in power accountable for their actions. We need strong, independent institutions that act as watchdogs, holding the powerful to account, exposing corruption, and ensuring that the rule of law applies to everyone, not just the privileged few. We need a free press that's not afraid to speak truth to power, to investigate wrongdoing, to hold those in positions of authority to a higher standard. And we need to be engaged citizens, demanding transparency from our elected officials, scrutinizing their actions, and holding their feet to the fire when they stray from the path of righteousness. Write to your representatives, attend town hall meetings, make your voice heard. Because in a democracy, the power ultimately resides with the people, but only if we're willing to claim it, to exercise it, to fight for it. Section 6. Building a better tomorrow, a vision for a free and just society. Look, I know it's easy to get overwhelmed, to feel like the forces of darkness are winning, that the deep state, or whatever you want to call them, are destined to rule the world. But I'm here to tell you, mate, that's not the only possible future. We have a choice, each and every one of us, to create a different kind of world. A world where power is decentralized, where information flows freely, where diversity is celebrated, and where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive. It starts with a vision, a shared understanding of the kind of future we want to create. A future where critical thinking is valued over blind obedience, where cooperation trumps competition, and where the pursuit of truth, justice, and equality guides our every action. It won't be easy building this better tomorrow. It'll require courage. It'll require resilience. It'll require us to come together, to bridge our differences, and to work together towards a common goal. But I truly believe that it's possible, because at the end of the day, the human spirit, the desire for freedom, for connection, for a world where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential, that's a force more powerful than any deep state, any propaganda machine, any attempt to control or suppress us. Now, we've talked a lot about the deep state, about control, about the fight for freedom and truth right here at home. But this battle, mates, it ain't confined to our own backyards. This is a global struggle, playing out on a stage far grander than any of us could have imagined. See, the deep state, if we're to believe they exist, they don't stop at national borders. They're like those cane toads, invasive, spreading their influence far and wide, infiltrating institutions, manipulating economies, and whispering in the ears of the powerful across the globe. Think about it. Multinational corporations, with more wealth and power than many nation-states, call the shots, dictating economic policies, influencing trade agreements, and exploiting resources with little regard for the consequences. Global financial institutions, like those shadowy figures in a high-stakes poker game, control the flow of capital, making or breaking economies with the stroke of a pen. And then there's the military-industrial complex, a global network of arms manufacturers, defense contractors, and government agencies, all too happy to profit from conflict and instability, fueling wars and perpetuating violence in the name of peace and security. It's a tangled web, mates, a global game of power and influence, and the stakes couldn't be higher. So, in this complex and often chaotic global landscape where power is concentrated in the hands of the few and the voice often drowned out, is there any hope for justice, for accountability, for a world where might doesn't always make right? Well, that's where the United Nations comes in. Now, I know what you're thinking, the UN, that bureaucratic behemoth, all talk and no action, right? And yeah, it's true, the UN has its fair share of flaws. It's slow, it's cumbersome, and it's often hamstrung by the very powers it's supposed to hold in check. But here's the thing. For all its shortcomings, the UN remains the only truly global forum we have, a place where nations, at least in theory, can come together to address common challenges, to resolve disputes peacefully, and to work towards a more just and equitable world order. It's a flawed instrument, no doubt, but it's an instrument that, if used effectively, has the potential to make a real difference in the world. The UN Charter, signed in the aftermath of World War II, outlines a vision of a world where peace is paramount, where human rights are respected, and where international cooperation is the guiding principle of international relations. Section 3, From Silent Witnesses to Global Guardians, Preventing Genocide. Now, one of the UN's most important mandates, and arguably one of its most challenging, is the prevention of genocide. See, after the horrors of the Holocaust, after the world witnessed the systematic extermination of millions of innocent people, there was a collective vow: never again. Never again would we stand idly by while such atrocities unfolded. Never again would we allow political expediency, national self-interest, or sheer indifference to trump our moral obligation to protect the innocent. But sadly, mates, never again has become an all too familiar refrain. From the killing fields of Cambodia to the Rwandan genocide, from the ethnic cleansing in Bosnia to the ongoing atrocities in Syria, the world has repeatedly failed to live up to its promise. The UN, often hamstrung by political gridlock, bureaucratic inertia, and a lack of resources, has often been too slow, too timid to act decisively to prevent these horrors from unfolding. And the consequences, as we've seen time and time again, have been devastating. Section 4. The power of international cooperation, strength and unity. But here's the thing about preventing genocide, about combating tyranny, about building a more just and peaceful world. It's not something any one nation, no matter how powerful, can do alone. It requires collective action, a united front of nations committed to upholding international law, to defending human rights, and to holding those who violate those principles accountable. The UN, for all its flaws, provides a framework for this kind of international cooperation. It's a place where nations, large and small, can come together to share information, to coordinate their efforts, and to present a united front against those who seek to sow chaos, to exploit the vulnerable, and to profit from human suffering. Now, I'm not naive, mates. I know that international cooperation is often easier said than done. National self-interest, political maneuvering, and good old-fashioned mistrust often get in the way. But I truly believe that it's the only way forward, that the challenges we face, climate change, pandemics, terrorism, economic inequality, are global in nature, and they demand global solutions. We need to move beyond the narrow confines of nationalism, beyond the zero-sum game of us versus them, and embrace a more enlightened understanding of our interconnectedness, our shared humanity. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, mates, sharing this fragile planet, hurtling through space. Section 5. A call to action. Our role in shaping a just world order. Now you might be thinking, John, mate, this is all well and good, but what can we do about it? We're just ordinary folks, not diplomats or world leaders. And you're right, you are. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. Far from it. See, change, real change, it doesn't start at the top. It starts at the grassroots level with ordinary people like you and me, demanding better, demanding more from our leaders, from our institutions, from ourselves. We need to stay informed about global issues. We need to support organizations that are working to promote peace, justice, and human rights around the world. We need to hold our own governments accountable for their actions on the international stage, demanding that they live up to their commitments to international law and human rights. And most importantly, we need to reject the politics of fear and division, the kind of rhetoric that pits us against each other based on our differences, our nationality, our religion, our political beliefs. Because those divisions, mates, they only serve to weaken us, to make us more susceptible to manipulation, to play right into the hands of those who seek to control us. Look, I know it's easy to get cynical, to feel like the world's gone mad, that the forces of darkness are winning. But I'm here to tell you, mates, don't give up hope. Don't ever underestimate the power of the human spirit, the indomitable will to fight for a better future. Throughout history, time and time again, ordinary people armed with nothing more than their courage, their convictions, and their unwavering belief in a better tomorrow have risen up to challenge the powerful, to overturn oppressive systems, to create a more just and equitable world. And that's the spirit we need to tap into, mates. The spirit of resilience, of defiance, of unwavering hope. The belief that together we can overcome any challenge, any obstacle, any deep state, any attempt to control or suppress us. It's a spirit that burns bright in the hearts of people all over the world, from the streets of Sydney to the villages of Sudan, from the favelas of Rio to the mountains of Afghanistan. It's a spirit that transcends borders, that unites us in our common yearning for a world where everyone, everywhere, has the opportunity to live a life of dignity, of freedom, of purpose. And that, my friends, is a future worth fighting for. Right then, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We've delved into some pretty heavy topics, from shadowy figures pulling strings behind the scenes to the anxieties surrounding overpopulation, from the manipulation of media narratives to the looming potential for martial law. It's enough to make you want to pull the blankets over your head and stay in bed all day, isn't it? But before you do that, let's take a step back, catch our breath, and have a good hard think about what we've learned so far. First off, the concept of the deep state. Is it real? Or is it just a conspiracy theory? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a topic that has sparked endless debates and discussions. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. That's for you to decide. But I will say this, powerful interests do exist, and they often operate in ways that benefit themselves, sometimes at the expense of the common good. This isn't a new phenomenon. Call it the deep state, call it the elite, call it whatever you like, but don't kid yourself. The struggle for power, for control, is as old as humanity itself. It's a tale as old as time. We've seen throughout history how easily power can be abused, how quickly freedoms can be eroded, and how readily people can be manipulated through fear, propaganda, and division. These are not just stories from the past, they are lessons for the present and the future. In the 21st century, with the rise of technology, with the proliferation of information, both true and false, the battleground has shifted, become more complex, more insidious. The digital age has brought new challenges and new opportunities for manipulation. With the proliferation of information, both true and false, the battleground has shifted, become more complex, more insidious. The lines between truth and fiction have blurred. But here's the thing, just because the battleground has changed doesn't mean the fight is over. Far from it. In fact, it's more critical now than ever. In fact, I'd argue that it's more important now than ever that we, as citizens, as human beings, stay vigilant and informed. We need to be aware of the forces at play, the tactics being used, and the stakes involved. Our future depends on it. Because here's the good news. For all the talk of shadowy figures and nefarious plots, the most powerful force in this whole equation is us. We, the people, have the power to resist, to challenge, to create a different kind of future. But that power, mates, it doesn't lie in some external force, some magical savior coming to rescue us. It lies within each and every one of us. It lies in our ability to think critically, to question the narratives we're fed, to see through the smoke and mirrors of propaganda. It lies in our willingness to engage in respectful dialogue with those who hold different viewpoints, to bridge the divides that separate us, to recognize our shared humanity. It lies in our courage to speak truth to power, to hold our leaders accountable, to demand transparency and justice. Because here's the thing about control, about manipulation, about all those tactics we've been discussing, they only work if we let them. They rely on our apathy, our complacency, our willingness to surrender our critical thinking skills at the altar of convenience or fear. So my friends, this isn't a time for despair. It's a time for action. It's a time to reclaim our power, our voices, our very destinies. It's a time to stand up, to speak out, to fight for the kind of world we want to live in, the kind of world we want to leave behind for generations to come. That fight starts with education. Arm yourself with knowledge, with critical thinking skills, with the ability to discern fact from fiction in a world awash in information overload. Support independent media, those brave souls who are risking their necks to bring us the truth. Get involved in your community. Connect with like-minded individuals. Support organizations that are fighting for social justice, for environmental protection, for a more equitable and sustainable world. And most importantly, never, ever give up hope. Because as long as there are people who are willing to stand up, to speak out, to challenge the status quo, there's always a chance, however slim, that we can turn the tide, that we can create a better future, a future where freedom reigns, where truth prevails, and where the human spirit, in all its messy, glorious complexity, can truly thrive. Cheers, mates. Don't forget to tickle the like and subscribe buttons.